I was a kid, my mom used to have a few slogans when we sat down to a humble meal. She'd say, "We're living in the lap of luxury," or "I wonder what the poor people are doing." It wasn't until years later that I understood her meaning, that we should be grateful for what we have, however meager it might be. Looking back on those meals, some of which were incredibly inexpensive, they were the opposite of luxury. However, as kids, we ate whatever we were given. And it turns out there are a number of foods that probably a lot of kids didn't realize were actually poverty foods, until they grew up, that is. Cinnamon sugar toast. It's amazing how many things you can make if you have just a few basic ingredients on hand. And in the 1930s, sugar became indispensable. Sugar in early American times would have been like gold, but during the Great Depression, sugar became a staple supply in every household. It had become cheap by then and made just about anything taste better. As we all know, cinnamon sugar toast is so amazing that they made it into a cereal, so it stands to reason that generations of kids did not think of this as poor food. Box macaroni and cheese. Kraft macaroni and cheese dinner was another food of the Great Depression. For a staggeringly low price, a family could have a one-pot meal. And whatever ingredients you have on hand, say peas or canned tuna, you can have a casserole in the making. Today it's often regarded as a comfort food, but that doesn't change how it started out. Chicken livers. It wasn't until many years had passed that my mom revealed that chicken livers were one of the cheapest meats at the store. Perhaps she was trying to prepare me for adulthood. In any case, breaded chicken livers are one of those foods that if you grew up with it, you probably still crave from time to time. Fried egg sandwiches. Considering how many incarnations of this humble sandwich are served in restaurants every day, we're betting that most people haven't really thought of this as poor people's food. But years ago, an egg sandwich was considered a cheap substitute for a sandwich made with cold cuts, the latter of which travels infinitely better in a lunch bag. Beans and rice. This is another inexpensive staple dish that can be made into whatever you want. You can add canned tomatoes, or sausage, or salsa, or onions, and make this into a dish based on what's in the cupboard. Beef stew. This hearty meal needs to be thick and tasty and is most definitely not a soup. Served with a piece of bread on a cold day, there's nothing better, but it's made with cheaper cuts of beef like chuck or round that need to be cooked a long time in liquid to become tender. The fact that this is a classic doesn't make it less of a poverty food. However, in truly tough times, beef might not have been available at all. Breakfast for dinner. Since breakfast foods are often cheaper than dinner foods, it saves a lot of money to make Brenner. Eggs for dinner was a recommended food during the rationing of World War II, and egg prices remain low today when compared with meats. An omelet with some veggies and a little cheese on top and toast or potatoes and pancakes is a hearty meal that most people wouldn't turn their noses up. Split pea soup. Peas have long been the food of peasants in Europe because they aren't hard to grow, and for a plant they contain lots of protein. Peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, peas porridge in the pot 9 days old. So goes the old nursery rhyme, which highlights how common the dish was for poor families. It also shows a preference for the old thickened soup, which many lovers of split pea soup today also enjoy. The soup is a classic, one that requires only a small amount of ham. But sometime in the 1980s, split pea soup became more upmarket than it had been in previous centuries, giving it an air of the high class despite the fact that it was basically one of the most traditional poverty foods, with roots in the old world. Fruit with condensed milk. Whatever fruit you have on hand, be it fresh or canned, can become a simple and cheap dessert with just the addition of condensed milk. Beginning in the 1940s and 1950s, condensed milk became another inexpensive must-have food for families, especially those with young children. For large families, a dessert like this would have been much easier on the finances than using something like ice cream or whipped cream, and it really does taste good.